Want to listen to this Ivory Tower Boiler Room episode and all of our Ivory Tower Boiler Room episodes ad free? Head to our Patreon, patreon.com. That's patreon.com/Ivory Tower Boiler Room for $5 a month. You get all of our ad free episodes, our video interviews, and our bonus episodes. See you there.
I want my students to be working actors. I think that's my job, is to make them working actors. So I want to teach them, and acting is acting across the board, but there are certain ways to meter it so it works better for film or television or the stage. Where the stage is, you have to be sometimes vocally much bigger, or even physically your gestures are much larger. On television, depending on where the camera is, or on film, there's a change in that, and there are even courses that are just strictly acting for films to learn how to use your eyes and use movement and all that.
LGBT stories are universal, but each one speaks to the individual heart and soul of the writer telling it. Do you have a story to tell? If so, the Gay and Lesbian Review wants to hear from you. Have you been moved by an LGBT book, film, painting, television show, or other form of media? The GNLR believes in bringing awareness to queer art and artists through reviews, commentary, and thought pieces in which the author relates their personal lives to a particular piece of art, a novel, a movie, or what have you. In addition to the articles published in the print magazine, the GNLR also publishes articles on its blog as well as personal essays on its popular Here's My Story section. This allows people like you to share their own experiences with our readers. To learn more about submitting either to the print or the online edition of the GNLR, visit glreview.org. That's glreview.org, and scroll down to the bottom of the page to find a link to their writer's guidelines. If you have any questions, email stephen.hemrick@glreview.org. The GNLR can't wait to see what you have to say. And remember that they're offering an exclusive code with the Ivory Tower Boiler Room. So when you subscribe to the magazine, you'll receive a free copy with any print or digital subscription. So that's 7 issues instead of 6. Again, just visit theglreview.org and click subscribe and enter the promo code ITBR for your free issue. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Ivory Tower Boiler Room. I'm really excited to be joined by another theatrical guest since we had met on the Upper East Side. So I kind of feel like we're just sitting back down again and continuing our conversation, which is always the best since we've actually met face to face, which doesn't happen a lot here. So I want to introduce Cristina Duarte, who is a director, actor, and instructor, and soon she'll discuss why she's an actor's director, which I just love that phrase. She was born in Portugal, then she immigrated to the US with her mother when she was 7. I know that she's from New Jersey, which I share with her. Us New Jerseyans stick together. She is a
Absolutely.
long, yes. I mean, she's a longtime New Yorker, though, just across the river. She spent more than 20 years working professionally. She is a member of the Stage Directors and Choreographers Society. She has directed numerous productions in New York City and Santa Fe. As a director, she is so interested in telling stories about our complex and courageous humanity. Yes, we need that now more than ever. She has taught acting and directing at Marymount Manhattan College, Brooklyn College, Hunter College, Queens College, the Stella Adler Studio, and the Santa Fe University of Art and Design. Well, without further ado, here is Cristina. Hi, Cristina.
Hi, Andrew. Thank you so much for having me. This is very nice of you. Thank you.
Of course. Well, maybe let's start right away with something that's excited me so much is this YouTube channel, this
Oh.
Instagram you created with Actors Director. And I'm just wondering, have you always, maybe even without that phrase, seen yourself as a certain actor's director, or is that something that started to take shape throughout the journey of your career?
Well, I've been directing a long time for close to 20 years, and it starts to take shape. Someone actually once said, "Oh, you're an actor's director," and I've heard that several times, from other people, other colleagues, and I sort of felt that way because an actor's director is a director that works with actors to try and bring nuance and detail from their performances. Now, directors do a whole bunch of things. They, have to work with designers, set designers, costume designers, lighting designers, and crew and tech and all of that. And of course, I do that too. But my focus is always on the narrative and creating and getting and guiding a really good nuanced performance from actors. So I think that's why that title, the actor's director.
Well, and do you find that from your so for everyone out there, when you went and you got trained
Mhm.
in theater, was it from more of the actors training, or was it a director approach?
It was
Mhm.
both. I many years ago when I was young, I went to Stella Adler Conservatory and studied there for 3 years and as an actor. Then later on, I went to Hunter College and had an MA in theater studies or art or theater arts, and then I did another. I got another MFA in directing from Brooklyn College. But it did start. I've been an actor and a teacher for a long time, and that started infiltrating into my directing, and I couldn't help but incorporate the language I understood, actors understood, and the technique and craft that I knew sometimes, especially with novice actors, and I couldn't help but do that in my directing as well.
Was the Stellar Adler experience, just because Stella Adler, that approach, it's so well known,
Mhm.
was it intimidating when you first went into that school and knew that you were going to go through that training process?
Oh, sure. And in those days, it was more intimidating, I think, than now because it was Stella was still around. Stella was still very much around. I didn't study with her directly, but I did take audit scene study classes with her all the time. But regardless, the other teachers or instructors that taught her style, it was the old school, where you were sort of told immediately, nope, that's not working, or get off the stage, or that kind of old school of teaching. I don't do that kind of teaching. I never subscribed to that. I wasn't comfortable with that, but it was very intimidating because it was more, you knew you could be pulled off, or it was very much about pleasing sometimes the instructor. And so yeah, it was a little tough, but it's
And
different. It's not. I don't. Stella Adler's not that way at all anymore. The studio is not that way. It's very encouraging, very affirming. It's in a very positive way. But everyone taught in that vein back in the day.
yeah, is it very different than, say, going to the actor's studio or training in musical theater specifically, or classical theater? Like, what is Stella Adler's, what was your experience in terms of the genres that you were being exposed to?
Well, what her big system is about isn't using the imagination. She started with the group theater, along with Strasberg and the 28 other members of the group theater. I actually did one of my thesis was on the group theater and Stella Adler and the group theater, so this comes in handy. But it was a long time ago, and she and Strasberg had conflicts about how acting should be. He was directing shows for the group theater, and she thought that it was too much sense memory and too much the self, and she really wanted much more to use the imagination. And she was one of the few, if not only, actors that went and studied with Stanislavski in Paris, I believe, in 1934, and for 5 to 6 weeks or so. And she came back and she said, he's really focusing on imagination. He's moved on from this initial concept. It was just a philosophy or a theory. And so hers is very much based on the imagination, on creating the character through imagination, creating the given circumstance through imagination, and also actions on the overall character objective and actions. So it's about
That's fascinating.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and just for everyone out there, Strasberg was really started the Actors Studio. Is that correct?
Correct, from what I understand, yes. And very much the idea of the method of method acting, which is the idea of sense memory and digging into your own life experiences to retrieve emotional experiences to play them on the stage realistically.
And we get into some psychoanalytic trauma, even responses to the character that you need to really, it's not about the character's context and history. It's about you, Cristina, actually finding what trigger, like what would make you do what you're doing as your character of your own psyche.
Correct, as
Which,
far as I understand, though I've never studied it personally. From what I know and read and understand, that's exactly correct, what you're saying about the Strasberg method.
yeah, and I think in our well-known, our zeitgeist, that would be the Heath Ledger Joker type, people thinking he was going really into method. And, I'm not saying that the method acting led to what happened to him, but method acting can be uh boundaryless if you're not in a protected circle of people.
I
With
guess so. I mean, Al Pacino's a big, he studied with Strasberg, Marilyn Monroe studied with Strasberg. And I'm not saying it's good or bad. I'm just, it's, for me, I think acting in a way is sort of like picking a philosophy or a religion or whatever. Not that I mean, it's such you should be a zealot about it. What I mean is it's what works for you. If it works for you, bravo, then use it. If it doesn't, it shouldn't be painful. It shouldn't be difficult. It should be challenging. The acting technique you work on and the craft you work on, it should challenge you as an artist, as an actor, as a theater person, but it shouldn't, I don't think it should break you personally.
Hi, this is Andrew, and I'm interrupting what I know is an enthralling interview because I want you all to know that we are sponsored by Broadview Press. And if you don't know, Broadview Press is an independent academic publisher who publishes books covering topics like English studies, writing, philosophy, history, gender studies. And every season on the podcast, I interview one of the Broadview Press authors. So for the fall, we had Ann Stevens on to talk about literary theory and criticism. She played a Wizard of Oz literary game with us. She talked about why Bridgerton actually involves literary theory. So does 50 Shades of Grey. Who knew? And also, we just had on Jeffrey Weinstock, who wrote the first ever pop culture analysis book. So, I am all things a lover of pop culture, especially my Hollywood topics, Real Housewives, the list goes on and on. And he also wrote the book called The Mad Scientist's Guide to Composition, where he's writing a book teaching students about how to write rhetorical strategies, but it's all around this metaphor of being in the mad scientist laboratory, because as you'll learn when you hear our episode with Jeffrey, he is a gothic and horror fanatic. And I mean that in all the best ways possible. So you don't want to miss Broadview Press's exclusive discount because you're listening to the podcast. All of you get an automatic 20% off. Use the code Ivory Tower for 20% off site-wide on all of their books. So in our show notes, we have a link to Broadview Press. Make sure you click the link, put in Ivory Tower, and you're going to get 20% off your order. So enjoy your reading, everyone.
It shouldn't hurt It
Yeah.
shouldn't break you down to the point that it's damaging your psyche or you emotionally. But whatever works for whomever they decide to follow, that's fine. As if it's working for you, then terrific.
Yeah, it's an approach. Just like in academia, my scholarly writing, like why you would turn to, say, a feminist critique or a sociological critique or race studies or an LGBTQ approach. These are all theories. And sometimes you organically get to your writing in a certain way. Like when I was acting, Christina, I like say for Captain Von Trapp, even though, it was in high school, but I feel like that younger learning is so important of experimenting
Yeah,
because the stakes are lower. And I was so invested always of learning about what Captain Von Trapp would be doing in that, like what he was around. So what was Austria like? What was the history, the biography? I'm really, which makes sense because I'm now a scholar. Like I approach everything through the literature and understanding culture. Um, but it seems like that's what all of your training, you
yes,
really like that's the actor's director, is you understand there's so many layers of how someone can get to it, and you need to find what works for your actor.
correct. And doing historical research or any kind of research is very, very important and goes along with the imagination, because now you have, some sort of understanding and format that you can then create an imaginative character from, or world from, or given circumstances from. Absolutely. So those two marry very well. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and how many people talk about Stella Adler being so significant as a female director? I mean, that was not common. And for her
No.
to actually have her own acting, her conservatory, that's,
Yeah.
a huge deal. Like, did you realize at the time that she was such a prolific figure?
Yes, I did. I understood, when I was in college, I had heard of people who had studied with her and understood and had read a little bit about the technique, and I thought, oh, this appeals to me. This is something I like. It's very creative. It uses the imagination. And she had worked with terrific actors. She'd worked with Marlon Brando, Robert De Niro, countless. There's so many. um, but yes, so it I really liked her approach, and I liked what she had to say. She was a magnificent woman, really, and she had such a presence when she walked in to the room. She had a regalness and a majesty, and so we all just sort of adored her and listened to everything she had to say. And she knew what she was talking about. I mean, she loved her students, and she really put her heart into it. But the group theater also had three. It started with three founding directors, and one of them was a female. It was Cheryl Crawford. It was Harold Clurman, Lee Strasberg, and Cheryl Crawford, who was back in the 30s. So there's been a few.
Yeah. Well, and I had just listened to this really in-depth podcast about Balanchine. And I mean, Balanchine had his method, and it was very, um, you had to conform. Like he really put them in this pressure cooker. But from what you're explaining, I mean, I love this idea of the imagination leading the actor. And do you think that this has been so talked about right now? I think it's become because of social media. There was this whole TikTok, Christina, about like how many have a BA in theater in the playbill on Broadway. And someone was trying to weigh in that you need to have, like, if you don't have a theater degree, um, as an undergrad and say it's in a different area or you went through different schooling, that you're not going to make it to this Broadway stage. But I feel that that's actually really counter to a lot of those I know who've made it to this stage or who've gone in different directions, like even studying in the sciences, or they found acting through a different creative process. Like, what would you say about that degree experience.
I mean, it's very nice to go to school and get a degree, but everyone's path to anything
Mhm.
is, but especially acting, can be in many ways. By all means, I really do believe that people should get training. I think it's important. It will help you a lot. But I also believe you need experience. You need to get on the stage or in front of a camera and do the work. I think that's equally important. Before there were conservatories and acting schools, that's how actors learned on the stage. They just followed another actor around and apprenticed, and learned how they and watched what they were doing and sort of started, slowly doing performances themselves. But I think it's a good marriage of both. Again, training is important. I think you need to understand. I think there's a structure to acting. There's definitely a craft. I think it can be learned. I don't think it's a magical, mystical thing that some people can get and others don't. I think there are people who are like anything else. You have more of a leaning towards maybe the craft of acting than others. Some people sing well, some people dance well, so on and so on. But I think it can be taught, and I profoundly believe that. And I think there's a structure to it, and there's a craft to it, and that it isn't mystical. It's doable. It's learnable.
Yes. And I just love all the aspects of the word craft because craft has that witchcraft. It's all mystical, spellbound, and but like you're saying, that enigmatic aspect really can be the technique needs to be learned. And you have the raw talent for singing, but there's a technique. Like if you're not breathing from your diaphragm, you're going to start to get
Hurt your feelings.
nodules, or you're
Yeah,
gonna, yeah, you'll really hurt your voice. Um, right. And the voice is so important in theater. It's
absolutely.
everything. Um, well, something I'm so curious about, Christina, is how you've taught in such different geographic areas. Like, especially I'm thinking from Santa Fe to now you're in Manhattan and you've been in Manhattan for over 20 years, but I'm sure you've gone across the country. And yeah, what is that like when you're not, say, in the quote unquote uh center of theater, right? I mean, I think we all think New York City, Manhattan is the epicenter, but there's so much else going on in the country.
There's lots of regional theater all over, and that does wonderful work, and that are equity houses as well. Besides theater, there's also, film and television all over, all the way from Atlanta, to Santa Fe. Um, yeah, there are opportunities in different places for sure. I went to Santa Fe for 4 years and then came back because there isn't a lot of work there, but I loved the place. It was such a beautiful, speak of magical place is Santa Fe. And I loved working there, and loved working at the school, but unfortunately the school was privately owned and it closed. So we all we all
Yeah.
went elsewhere. But I had wonderful colleagues. I had John Jury, who had started the Actors Theater of Louisville, and the uh, well, actually, he picked it up. He didn't start it. He picked it up. Richard Block had started it, and he developed it into what it is today in the Humana cycle and all of those playwrights. He was the founder of the Long Wharf Theater, and he was one of my colleagues, and he's now one of my mentors.
Oh,
So I really, there was Shepard Sobel too, who had started the Pearl Theater here in New York, and he went out and lives in New Mexico, and now teaches. He taught at the university I taught at, and now since it's closing, teaches at the University of New Mexico. So there was all these wonderful people, and Laura Fine Hawks, who teaches at Binghamton. She's a designer, and she was our chairman. Just great people, but then it was time to sort of spread out and regroup, and I wanted to come home, and I'm really happy to be back in New York because I feel like this is where I've been the most, and I feel the most comfortable in.
yeah. Do you think that there's a real pressure when you're in New York I mean, there has to be, right? There's a certain pressure of the business that is there more of a freedom when you're, say, in a Santa Fe or in local theater in the Midwest that might
I
not exist.
I don't know. I can't speak for all of it, but sometimes this is gonna sometimes in small towns it's a tougher pool
Mhm.
because people are more competitive and it becomes sort of like people small pond big fish attitude, and
Mhm.
it can be a little bit more competitive actually than in though it's highly competitive here, but it's competitive in a different way and not always a pleasant way, which I didn't appreciate. So people could be competitive just because there's so little things out there, or not as much.
Mhm.
It becomes more of who wants to be the big fish in that little pond. So
Yeah, because there's so many independent theaters in New York City, and like there's like the Brooklyn scene, there's the North Jersey Regional Theater, there's Philly, like which is a quick train ride.
exactly,
Um, yeah, so there's a lot. Long Island, of course.
exactly.
Okay, yeah, no, that makes sense. And I mean, I grew up right outside of Philly, but even in the regional theater experience I had professionally, um, there was a certain who got cast and are they related to the
Yeah,
director,
exactly.
that nepotism, which,
Precisely.
usually in Manhattan, it's not through the family.
No,
Like,
no, right. But in very small venues, you will find that because it becomes that kind of a competition, and it's not equitable or fair, or yeah,
yeah,
it's
but it's a good life lesson.
yes.
So, I know that you have also had film experience, and I know that you are in the ensemble of SNL,
Yes.
right? Okay. So, do you find that the training you give your students in acting, that it is very divergent, whether they want to be more on screen or if they want to be on the stage?
Yeah, well, I want my students to be working actors. I think that's my job, is to make them working actors. So I want to teach them, and acting is acting across the board, but there are certain ways to meter it so it works better for film or television or the stage. Where the stage is, you have to be sometimes vocally much bigger, or even physically your gestures are much larger. On television, depending on where the camera is, or on film, there's a change in that, and there are even courses that are just strictly acting for films, to learn how to use your eyes and use movement and all that.
Hi, this is Andrew. So, when I'm not here in the Ivory Tower Boiler Room, sometimes I'm actually invited to be on other podcasts as a guest. Well, there is one podcast run by Christian Garcia and his co-host Nate that I absolutely love. It is called That Old Gay Classic Cinema. So calling all you classic cinema fans out there and those who love queer theme cinema, which I think there's a lot of you who are listening right now where you've perked up. So follow them on Instagram at that OL Gay Classic Cinema. The first ever episode I was featured as a guest. It's The Sound of Music. I got to talk about being Captain Von Trapp in high school, and it's just such an exciting conversation. They've also featured discussions about Gone with the Wind, The Wizard of Oz, which features guests from the podcast The Garland Gab and Down the Yellow Brick Pod. There's a deep dive of Cinderella, and recently they had an episode on the film Giants starring Elizabeth Taylor, Rock Hudson, and James Dean. And actually, one of the guests, Lauren Randall, I know from Stony Brook University's PhD English department. So shout out, Lauren. You can listen to That Old Gay Classic Cinema on Apple, Spotify, wherever you listen to podcasts. It's definitely such a great listen. So why not listen to it after you listen to this current episode on the Ivory Tower Boiler Room?
But ultimately acting is acting, and you need to understand how to play character. You need to understand your beats. You need to understand your actions. So yes, I try really to give them a holistic understanding, because I want them to be working actors. And what I always want my students to be is autonomous. I want to give them tools and skills that they can take and then apply, that there's a structure to this. Like I said, a craft that they can say, okay, this is how I break down a script. And now I understand how to break down a script. I'm looking for this. I'm looking for the beats. I'm looking for an arc. I'm looking for my objective. I'm looking for my actions, my tactics, and then how to, do research on characters so that they have things that they can follow, templates that they can follow, instruction that they can follow, that they can take on their own. Because you don't want to be a guru to anyone. You don't want to, I tell them, stay away from gurus. Never study with anyone for more than 3 years, because then you're not learning, you're not growing. You want to continue hearing from other instructors and professors and teachers and coaches, so that you get different perspective. Might be on the very same thing, but a different light bulb might turn on that you go, oh, I get it. Oh, okay. And again, acting, like we were talking about before, it's whatever works for you. But I think it's a little bit of taking from this and taking from that, and sort of creating something for yourself that works, that you can get a script and understand it and do what you need to do with it to be successful.
Yeah, well, and some might recognize you from the courtroom scenes of SNL, or that's how I recognized you, Christina. And like there, you have to, assuming you have to be there, you're very trained to not be expressive. It's like keep a straight
Exactly.
face, don't like smile.
Right.
And like, what is that experience like? Especially because I feel SNL is one of those areas in Manhattan where um it's so unique, because the city doesn't really have anything as, I mean, maybe there is another TV show that is as a high of an exposure show, but I do think SNL is one that so many know in America.
Yeah.
Um, that you are getting a lot of that mix between guests who come from a lot from film, from theater, from even professional sports,
Professional.
influencers like Kim Kardashian, um, that you're always probably observing such different techniques that they're trying to shine, make the guest shine is their goal, and play around the guests' skills. But like, what is it like for you to be on the ensemble, observing all of that?
Well, it's really a gift. It's a gift. It's just a gift. And why I've been there since 2005, except for the 4 years I was in Santa Fe. And then I came back, and I'm very blessed they took me back. And because I do get to see all these terrific talents, do comedy, and whether they're award-winning actors or award-winning football players, which we just had, who was terrific, Travis, and yes, and they're being supported to do a good job. But they really, I'm often shocked how well they deliver, because it's not an easy show. It is like a 6 ring. It's got 6 stages. It's like a 6 ring circus, and it moves really quickly, and it's a hybrid between television and live theater. Um, but I don't see what goes on behind the scenes in the writers' room, but we rehearse. We rehearse a few times, and it's just it's a good atmosphere. It's a positive atmosphere. I think people enjoy it. For them, it's a very special thing. For me, it's very special too, for all of us. And it's a gift to be sort of watching. But we're told, we don't ever want to upstage anyone who's part of the cast or who's a host. So the idea is, and also it's funnier when people are sometimes a little bit serious, and the comedy is happening in front of you, and the reaction is sort of minimal.
Yes, yes. And is everyone else in the ensemble then in a similar position where they're either a direct, like they are an educator or they're an actor?
They're mostly actors, some people, are dancers, or they've dabbled here and there in acting, and but mostly actors, mostly actors.
Okay, so it's not like everyone is in your same position where they're a theater educator, like they're a director on the
No,
side.
no, not necessarily. No, no.
Okay, okay.
But
I was
there are
like, maybe they're all
no, but there
pooling
are
from the same place.
everyone does like different, they have different job. This is not our only job, working at SNL. So everyone, does all kinds of things, from acting to some do teach. I have a colleague who runs her own improv school and teaches improv, and also teaches at a university. But that's far and few. It's mostly actors who this is another acting job, and it's a wonderful acting job.
Yes, yes. Well, and I saw Quinta Brunson, who's I'm such a fan of Abbott Elementary. I think it's one of the best ensemble shows. Um, so kudos to her. And
I was
I,
there last night. I was there with her.
okay,
I was in the bosses sketch. I haven't even watched it. I'm leaving as it's starting. But yeah,
okay,
the
okay.
bosses sketches from last night.
Yeah, so um, whenever you're listening to this, make sure you check back Quinta Brunson's episode. See if you can find Christina. It's like a Where's Waldo
It's exactly that.
puzzle. But let's get into your teaching because I find it must be really interesting the students that you're exposed to, especially in the city, like that they're coming from such vast areas to study. So, like, is there a difference between, say, when you're teaching at Marymount Manhattan, which is really known for its acting school, and then compared to, say, a Hunter College, which does have acting, but it's not necessarily the same, and correct me if I'm wrong, but like Marymount Manhattan to me is like more of the intensive acting training. Like people know about it through the acting program.
Correct. That is. I haven't taught at Hunter in a long time. That was where more recently taught at Brooklyn, and Brooklyn College has very good BA and BFA programs in acting, and they also have MFA programs in acting and directing. Um, it's not this. I guess it depends. Again, a BA program isn't going to push as hard all of the classes that you need to. There are much greater requirements for a BFA acting major than there are for a BA. It's a little bit more scholarly. It's a little bit more academic, though they do get up and act and perform and do that as well. But BFA, it's being trained to really go on the stage, not just reading about the history and theory of theater, but really going on the stage. Whether there's any difference, no, I think no. I think in some regards, people really are passionate about it. It's a profession that takes a lot of dedication and a long-term dedication. And just because people are in sometimes BA programs doesn't mean they're not dedicated. They are. It's just somehow that's, for whatever reason, that's the path they went. You can always continue to study afterwards at workshops or get your MFA someplace in acting or directing or whatever it is you'd like to do in theater. So they can continue on. But no, I think most college students come with a lot of passion to do it.
Well, and what are some common, maybe, I wouldn't just say misconceptions, but I don't think that would be the right term. With your students, what are some um, beliefs that they're holding when they come to you in the classroom that you have to have them unlearn? That maybe it's just so ingrained in their practice of acting.
Yeah, it's a good question. Um, uh, it's getting less and less, but the idea of being, especially if they are new, if they're sophomores or freshmen, when they get to their junior and senior years, this isn't as much of an issue. But to be less performative, that acting is performing, that, and the idea that it isn't, it says to be as truthful as possible. And to do that is to bring yourself to the role. You have to bring aspects of yourself to the role, because that's the unique fingerprint that you have that makes you unique in an audition from another actor. They're all going to read the same lines, but what is it you're bringing besides, your unique personality, stretched into these given circumstances of whatever the character is, and your choices, meaning your choices of objective, action, imagination, how you're subtexting behind the lines. So the biggest misconception is that you have to be performative. You don't. Acting, there's an old saying, is never let them see you acting. A good actor, it's seamless. You don't want to see, you don't want anyone to see you acting. You want it to be as truthful and realistic and real life as possible. And the other thing is, and this sort of fits into this, is playing character. It's always about playing character. Well, character to play, and I just did this, one of my little videos for my channel was about this, or it's going to be about this, is it's not about playing character, it's about playing the objective. How people, who we are, we don't carry a sign that says, I'm a very nice person, I'm kind, I like to laugh at jokes, but step on my toes and I become Joe Pesci in Casino. That's because I'm from Jersey, okay? We don't carry that. How people understand who we are as human beings is by our actions, what we do and what we want. How it's always about doing. So I really tell my students to, if they're going to focus on the character by what the character objectives are. What does the character want, from the other person? From what is their overall super objective? What are they looking for? That tells more about the character than anything they say or feel. The feeling is an after effect. The feeling comes because they're hitting an obstacle, and so they're not getting what they want. So some emotion may come up naturally, hopefully, not performatively. But yes, not to focus so much on character, unless of course you're playing an iconic character that we all know, like Elvis or Marilyn Monroe, that we know who they were, their mannerisms. Then of course you have to very much focus on their mannerisms and who they are. But if it's just, the generic police officer, the teacher, the detective, whoever it is, bring yourself into those given circumstances. How would you react? How would you react if you were a detective in this Law and Order episode, and and this was your objective? You're trying to investigate this crime and find out if this person is guilty or not guilty of, are they lying or not lying to you? So yes, bring yourself a little bit to the role. That's your unique fingerprint.
Yeah, so it's really about the motives and the desires of that character. And not saying like, oh, I have to be happy in this line. Because you're saying, then you're not in the moment. You're just thinking, I better hit this mark.
Right. Then you're creating the byproduct. You're really doing a performance, creating a performance and not something, authentic. And the emotion is really not for you. The emotion is really for the audience to have. In real life, we don't go around emoting a lot. We try to hide our emotions, especially if they're big emotions, because, and it's what seeps between the cracks that make us really interesting. And an audience does the same. It will push away from an actor if they're overly emotive and performative. It's sort of like having that friend in real life that is constantly needy and complaining, and you're like, oh, okay. And then you have that other
here
one.
We go again.
Then you have that other one. You're like, are you okay? And they're like, yeah, I'm okay. Okay, I'm okay. And you're like, no, what's happening? Is there anything I can do? Tell me what's going on. And they're hiding. Then you lean in and want to know. It's the same thing on stage with an actor. You don't want to play the emotion. The emotion is the byproduct of wanting whatever action objective you want, hitting an obstacle, and it creates some sort of emotional response, and hopefully naturally. And that's the magic of being a good actor, is that you're having an authentic experience, so that the audience is also leaning in, having an authentic experience with you, because they feel it's truthful. It's not fictional. It's not fake. It's not fake tears. It's not a fake laughter. It's genuine.
Yeah, there's a realism to the performance because you are experiencing, like, say, if you're skittish in a certain scene, because I don't know, you just committed adultery and now you have to face your spouse, or your partner. You're not going to look at them directly in the eyes. Like, there's going to be a certain masking, but it's not, oh, I committed adultery, and then you like throw it all on them. Like, I love
Right.
what your explanation is, Christina. It's really has to seep out. Like, you have to allow
It to seep
the
into the
audience to analyze the process.
yes. And that's the thing of being a director. And again, this actor's director thing is, you want your actors to understand, and as a director, you certainly have to understand that the audience is part of that ensemble too. They're part of the production. They are experiencing, their energy is part of it, especially if it's live, if it's theater. It influences what's going on. You influence them, they influence you, and they let them have the experience, let them have the emotion, let them Robert De Niro says, do nothing. One of the things he said is like, do nothing, as an actor, let the audience have that experience. And it's true. It's not that you're doing nothing. It's that
Mhm.
you're not performing. Let the audience feel the emotion. The emotion should be for the audience. You sort of allow them that space. And as a director, I really am conscious of that they have that, especially for stage, that they have that space, the audience, to be there with you, and so you're not pushing emotion on them. You're allowing them to join you and feel what you're feeling as the
Well, and I feel that a director, especially all my directors, I give directors so much credit because it can really easily become, like, I've seen certain directors' actions with the cast. It confirms what they would want as an audience member. Like that director who claps every time. I mean, that's just a stereotype, but I've had that. I think we've all had that experience where they're laughing, they're like in the back of the house, and I'm thinking, wait, there's a whole audience now here. Like, it's not about
right.
confirming your experience. But that's a hard process, though. I mean, how do you, as a director, like, to all the directors listening to this out there, like, I've been lucky enough to have one of my directors on the podcast, Renee Chambers Lisiaga, who is a professional dancer, choreographer, director, and also has your type of approach, which is she knows what it's like to be on the stage and also get into what would motivate you as um a character and in your acting craft. But how do you, Christina, try to remind yourself this isn't what Christina would love to watch? Like, I'm not gonna just applaud, like,
Right.
get them to what I would want as an audience member.
Well, that the job of the director is to be the eyes when you're working, be the eyes and ears of the audience. You're really working for the audience, and you want to make it. A director brings a vision, because somebody's got to guide, so everybody's on the same page together. The director's the great unifier of everyone's visions and choices and imagination and all of that, all the stuff that actors and designers bring. We're the unifier, and you guide that. But you always have, for me, I think, I also teach directing at Marymount, and I've taught elsewhere at Santa Fe. What you have, as a director, you have to make sure that you're true to the narrative, that you're true to the playwright, and that it's balanced. It's not just it's not just one perspective, but that you want to give a balanced perspective, because that's what makes a story so much more interesting. If you lean just to one thing and like, oh, this is the villain and this is the good character, then it's melodrama. No, you want to give balance because those are the best plays, right? Or the best movies we watch. It's like, ooh, when you get out of the theater and you want to discuss it and you have an opinion and I have an opinion and we sort of discuss it. But I thought they did this, and the other person says, no, 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 no. But I thought it was, you know, their fault because they did this. So that they're, and that's real life. We're not just villains and heroes. There's a lot of gray area. So I like to give a very balanced performance, and make sure that I am always the eyes and ears of the audience. And that means the director positively, absolutely can have no ego. It cannot be about you. If it's about you, you could see it in the performance, in the production. You see that, oh, like they're productions that try things because it looks interesting, but it has nothing to do with the story, or it doesn't push the story along. That might be the director pushing their ego on that. And to address what you said about clapping in the back, I actually never, I try to watch the audience when my productions are going on, especially in the beginning. I want to watch the audience to see how they're reacting. I've seen the play, I've directed the play. Now I want to see what's going on. Are they engaged? Are they leaning forward? Are they coughing a lot? Are they shifting? What moments are really engaging them? So I'm watching the audience when we have opening nights and dress rehearsals.
Yeah. Well, and has there been a project where you had to really fight against, say, an actor's choice, and you're like, this isn't what I would do in there. This isn't how I would approach the character, but I get it. Like, I understand why they made that movement or why that speaks to their body. Like, it makes sense, but you had to kind of fight against your own approach.
I like to be very collaborative. Like
Hmm.
I tell my directing students, it never says on the marquee or on the playbill or wherever, directed by Cristina Duarte, except that one part, you know, where so and so does this. That was their idea.
Yes, yes.
It doesn't say that. So every good idea, everything that works, ends up looking good for you. So the idea to be a good director is that you always are trying to serve the story to make it the best production possible. Not a production for your own ego, not a production that's just, you know, to showcase you. You are showcasing the production and your actors. You've got to step back. Again, no ego. It cannot have ego. It's about them. If the production looks good, then you look good because you've done your job. If it doesn't, then you've had too many hands in there. And no, you're supposed to, as a director, allow actors to make choices. They're supposed to bring choices to the role. You want that because their choice may be much more interesting than yours. And again, it doesn't matter who decided what. What matters is the final production and that it's good and satisfying to the audience.
Yeah, well, I'm so invested in listening to actors' interviews, especially whether it's the Hollywood Roundtable, which I always find so mind-boggling. Well, mystic in a way, because they don't get to sit down and all chat a lot about the business. But
Yes.
also for Broadway actors or off-Broadway actors, I love to hear about just process, which is why we're here. But um, something though that has struck me is how there's kind of been a pushback over the years, like that an actor thought they didn't have a say with a director. Like they couldn't say, this isn't working. Like I'm not getting there. But they would just trust that the director would stop them if it wasn't working. But like that would never happen, even though they were fighting against a organic feeling of coming up against that obstacle, like you've said. Do you find that it has changed? Like, is it cultural, like historical time has passed where actors feel more agency in this collaboration that
I
they might
think
not have done that in the past?
Hey, Ivory Tower Boiler Room listeners and true crime friends. You've heard me gush over this incredible woman and her beautiful products. I'm talking about Mandy Made It. Mandy makes customized and original crochet and pre-cut goods. They are the perfect, unique, one-of-a-kind gift for literally anyone in your life. And she makes incredible home decor. I still have my pumpkins that I put out every fall. I just love them. Check her out on Instagram at MANDEE Made It, or search Mandy Made It on Facebook. To order, just slide into her DMs, and if you mention the Ivory Tower Boiler Room, you will receive a free personalized gift with your first order. So, go on Instagram and look up at Mandy Made It, and Mandy is spelled MANDEE. Again, her handle is at Mandy Made It, Mandy spelled MANDEE, and order today.
Absolutely. I really do think so. I mean, certainly we train our actors to have agency, to make choices, because you're supposed to. Directors expect you to come with choices, and if it's not working, I say, well, let's try something else, or whoever the director is should say, let's try something else, and you should have other choices that you can bring to the table, not just that one. But I think so. I think it's changing a lot, and for the better, because it is a collaborative art. And it needs to be a collaborative art, because it's not just one, person that knows everything about it. You don't. You're just the guide, and the unifier of all these talents. And it's a great responsibility, and it's a great honor. So yes, absolutely.
Yeah, you're connecting all the pieces together.
Yes.
So, as we're wrapping up, which this went by so quickly, Cristina, again, we'll have to sit down again.
I agreed. Yes,
yeah.
let's talk.
So, something I'm curious about is, I know you attend, just like I do, you love seeing theater.
Mhm.
And I'm curious, when you go into a theater, do you automatically have that actor's director hat on just because that is who you are? Like, you are now, are you able to, are you analyzing the choices? Like, can you see, oh, this is what's happening on the stage? The director decided to take them into this type of process?
If it's a good production, no, I'm lost. I'm totally taken in, like the rest of the audience, and then I come home and think about it, like, what was it that they were doing that was so good, that the actors were doing and the director was doing that was so good? If it's a bad production, then right away you're already leaning, again, you're not leaning forward, you're leaning back on your seat, and you're sort of saying, I don't know why they're doing that. That's not working. And it's an immediate thing. So if it's good, no, I think everyone just leans in and is captivated, and you can think about it, and should think about what is it that they were doing that really was working.
Yeah, so I haven't seen A Doll's House with Jessica Chastain, but I've seen the turntable of her on stage for 20 minutes before the show begins. But like, automatically I'm thinking, oh, okay, so there's something about her body and her not able to speak, and she's now just physically moving around and stuck. Like, she's stuck on this cog, on this wheel, which makes sense to me. It's this minimalist production idea of Nora as, like, not only is she stuck in domesticity, she's stuck in her space. Like, she physically can't move from the stage.
I
Is, I'm
see.
assuming, where they were going with this.
I assume. I haven't seen it. I definitely want to see it, but I haven't yet seen it, so I can't comment.
Yeah, but I give credit to any actor who has to sit on the stage for an extended period while the audience is coming in. That's a hard process. Um,
I've done that in a play. I directed Passover early on before I went to Broadway. Actually, I directed it at Brooklyn College, and I had my actors, because again, it's sort of it's Passover by Antoinette Nwandu. It is reflective of Waiting for Godot. It's very much it's sort of the story of Waiting for Godot, but in different context. And I had my actors on the stage as the audience was coming in, and they loved it. They actually loved it. But that's the idea. They're stuck there. They were stuck in that, in those given circumstances, in that neighborhood, in that area, in that situation. So, but they enjoyed it. They really was a challenge for them, and the audience was sort of taken aback because they're like, oh, the actors are on stage. Two actors are on stage, and they're moving around and they're sort of doing their thing. And but I think it's an interesting choice, and it says something. It's a symbolic choice.
Yeah. What for you, what has been the most transformative experience as an audience member? Do you remember one production that just really hit you in the core of how moving it was? There was just something about that process as an audience member.
Wow. I'm trying to remember. It goes way back. I remember it was years and years ago, Death of a Salesman with Brian Dennehy and Philip Seymour Hoffman, I believe. No, I'm confusing that with Long Day's Journey into Night, which was also powerful. But it was how, yeah, it was that Death of a Salesman sort of like struck me. It was so powerful, the direction of it, and I cannot now remember who directed it, which is terrible. But they used sound and lighting and all the elements, and it just was very strong. I remember that. But I also like recently saw Some Like It Hot and loved the music and just loved the spectacle of it all and the joy of it all. And I thought it was such a wonderful production in a totally different way. So they're all kind of unique, but I remember that a long time ago. I was young and seeing Death of a Salesman, and it kind of it struck me. Oh, but I know one of my favorite of all times, and this is going to sound strange, of all time performances, and I've seen it now 3 or 4 times, is Slava Snow Show. If you've never
Okay.
seen Slava
No,
Snow
I've never seen
Show,
him.
it's a European performance. It's almost impossible to explain. But it involves clowning, but not in our typical way, in almost a Chaplin-esque way. And I'm a big fan of Chaplins. And it's like Chaplin means Waiting for Godot.
Mm.
And it's so magical. It's so transformative, and it's so immersive. It involves the audience. Very much so. It's incredibly immersive with the audience that I think I wept with joy watching that. And I've seen it like 3, 4, every time they come into the city, I will see it. So I highly recommend Slava's Snow Show if he tours it again.
I need to see. Yeah, no. If it comes around, I'm gonna see it from your recommendation.
Oh,
Yeah, I still remember when I saw Next to Normal. That to me was a musical experience of just mental health that you weren't able to look away from her
mm,
breakdown experience. And when you can't look away, the catharsis is so palpable.
yeah.
Like, but there's that, and there's also, I'll always remember when I just a few years ago saw King Lear and absolutely loved the daughters. Like, it's interesting to me how what the actor brings to a Shakespeare character, especially Shakespeare, because you know it so well, that
Uh,
then I realized, oh, this is the daughter's play. This isn't King Lear's play.
are you talking about Sam Gold's King Lear?
Yeah, Sam
I
Gold's
saw
King
that.
Lear.
Yeah.
I absolutely loved the trio of
Yes.
daughters.
Yes.
Like I personally, I think they outshined. Uh,
Lear.
I think it was it Glenda
I don't remember
Jax?
now
I'm trying to
either.
remember who actually played King Lear, but um, I thought that they worked so well together. That's what it is. It's the chemistry. Um, that you can, as an audience member, you can tell their authenticity. Yeah, so well, this has been so enjoyable, Christina. I
Lear. Thank you,
love
Andrew.
learning about your method. I love learning about what your students are experiencing in the classroom. And yes, please keep, me in the loop so I can share it out. Like anytime you have a performance you're directing, I want to try to come.
Oh,
Uh,
thank you. I
yes,
appreciate that.
yes. And also, can you tell everyone how they can follow you, like where you are on social media, your YouTube channel?
My YouTube channel is at the Actors Director, and my Instagram is Actors Director. No, that. And I have a website too, which is www.ChristinaDuarteDirector.com. If people want to follow me there too.
Good, good. And we have all of that in our episode notes for you all listening. So just go down, click the hyperlink, follow Cristina, listen to her advice. And especially if you're a theater educator, you're an actor, you're a director, you do anything in theater, reach out to her. I'm sure she would love to hear that you've listened to her advice and connect because it is all a big network.
It is
Um,
a big network. I would love to. I would love to hear from colleagues and actors and anything. And I also coach privately, so I have some private
there you
students as
go.
well.
Oh, good, good, good. So
in
you can,
film, in
yeah.
film right now that I coach. Yeah.
Oh, good. So you can actually, experience private coaching from Christina. Okay. So thank you, Christina, and thanks to all listening. I really just loved this conversation with you. It was
Thank
wonderful.
you. Same here. Thank you so much, Andrew. Let's do tea when we can.
Yes, let's do tea. Oh, I love that. Okay. Okay. On that note, everyone, bye. Have a good day.
Bye bye.
Thank you so much for listening to the Ivory Tower Boiler Room. This is Andrew Rimby, the executive director. I want you all to follow us on social media because there's so many video clips that we share and so many photos about these episodes. Follow us on TikTok and Instagram at Ivory Tower Boiler Room. Follow us on Twitter at Ivory Boiler Room. Follow our Facebook page, The Ivory Tower Boiler Room. Join our Patreon, patreon.com/Ivory Tower Boiler Room. For $5 a month, you get ad-free episodes, our video interviews, the True Crime and Academia bonus episodes, and all Ivory Tower Boiler Room bonus episodes. Thanks for buying a coffee for me. And thanks to an amazing team. Thanks, Mary. She's our chief contributor. And thanks to the Ivory Tower Boiler Room spring interns, Andrea, Caitlin, Sarah, Sheila, and Rosie. See you all again in the Ivory Tower Boiler Room.